How have hybrid and remote events been for you? Whether you used to attend events in person, daily, or once in a blue moon, we all have shared experiences with others at events, workshops, and even coffee shops. And as I start to attend my first in-person friends gatherings and speaking events in 2 years, I'm having butterflies. While I've loved a lot of ease that remote has brought, I've also missed in-person interaction. But the transition back to in-person or keeping things hybrid hasn't been easy. What are mask policies? And how do you design experiences to truly be inclusive and equitable? Hybrid and remote are here to stay. So how do we use this time to really rethink how we connect and share experiences together in a more meaningful way? Hi, I'm Monica King, founder and CEO of Innovators Box and the host of this podcast, Dear Workplace.
Honestly, with the pandemic, it completely disrupted the entire events industry, right? We're so used to doing in-person events, and prior to the pandemic, we've done some hybrid, so that we're familiar, but virtual was completely new to us.
I think the shifts that's happening with that, it means that lots of employers, including co-working, will have to adjust their footing.
Welcome to Dear Workplace, where we study changes, trends, and challenges in the workplace. Today, I'm excited to dive deeper into how we're really connecting online and what we can do to improve the distance we feel while working remotely. The relationships we build at work matter because the friendship and the allyships influence how we feel about the work. Even the most stressful task could feel manageable when we are reminded we are not alone and that there is someone else to help us and got our back. This is why as we work online, the lack of small talk and water cooler conversations has made it hard for many to find connectivity. There is no longer the stop by my cubicle for a quick chat. Now, connection has to be scheduled or becomes several email or Slack threads. There must be a better way, which is why I wanted to speak with two entrepreneurs who are navigating this challenge differently. One who used this time to both pivot how she does team building internally as well as for her clients, and one who used this time to reinvent how we think about hybrid space for team collaboration from the very beginning.
So sometimes when I talk to her, we end up disagreeing because she's seeing from the other point of view and I'm seeing from the entrepreneur point of view. They are always like, just take the safer route. And I'm like, and the entrepreneurs, we have to take risks, right? Just like last year when I pivot, I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, but I'm glad I took the risk because there's some agencies out there, they're still waiting for the pandemic to be over. So they actually end up closing or furloughing people, but I didn't have to do that.
Meet Amanda Ma, founder and chief experience officer at Innovate Marketing Group, an award-winning experience agency that provides full-service event management and activation for Fortune 500 companies, live, hybrid, and virtual. Located in LA, Amanda creates distinguished experiences both locally and nationally and has received numerous awards for the work they do. She has a knack for creating experiences as she has 16 plus years of experience in business, event management, and marketing industry and has been seen on Inc., Meeting Today, and more. But like everyone last year, she was faced with a new challenge. Most of what she has done was in person. Now that was no longer possible. So how do you create experiences online? If your full team was used to doing everything in person?
I mean, definitely virtual is here to stay, especially for a lot of the events that we did. We saw success in the virtual event because it really broadened the reach. I think that's the number one benefit of virtual. A women's conference that we used to do in Los Angeles for 1,000 people, The furthest attendee was probably from San Diego. But then this year when we did it virtually, we now have people from Canada. And another event we did, now there's people from Europe, right? So they don't need to fly here. They could just enjoy and tune in via virtually. And I think a lot goes back to the strategy, just like how we do in-person events. It start with the strategy. Next is the goal. I always start with why, right? Things like, why are you doing this event? What are some KPIs we need to hit? And then from there, with those information, we're building what we call attendee journey.
Yes, events, workshops, and even meetings are all experiences we create and share with one another. When we are being intentional, we could create something that we remember and cherish. This is why the framing of seeing this as a journey is so key. Something I've also done in all my workshop designs, as well as a skill I train in my Rethink facilitation course.
So what do you want them to experience? Is this more educational? Is this more interactive? So really building it out versus just okay, we get on Zoom and then go, right? And I love Zoom. We actually use that quite often, but we use it a little bit differently. And there's so many tools that you can use to help make the virtual event or hybrid a little bit more lively. So I definitely see hybrid in the future, but live events is also going to come back. I think but then the recovery is slow, right? Just because now we have Delta variant here and a lot of unknown. So people are doing smaller events because of the pandemic right now. And they're still leveraging the virtual. And then some are doing, of course, more the hybrid as well, where you have the small group on site and then they'll live stream the virtual part so that the people, maybe they're international, or a lot of our companies are nationwide or even international, right? So they're doing more regional events, but then the people that are out of that city or state, then they will just tune in virtually to be safe.
So many nuggets of wisdom right here. To make hybrid experiences intentional, we have to see it as a journey and remember what are the things that we appreciated and valued when we connected in person. We forget that when events were in person, all the details played a role in how we felt about the experience. From the invitation, the decoration, the food and beverage, music, ambience, dress code, and who else was in the room made you feel how you'd want to experience the event. I mean, I remember how I used to strategize showing up so you don't show up too early or too late to mingle and meet enough people at the right time, but not feel awkward alone next to the snack corner. This is the very insight that I feel we are often forgetting because we're simply now sending a Zoom link and asking people to come instead of thinking of the full journey of what people were thinking and feeling before they attended a session. And believe me, this was not easy for Amanda. As I said, she used to do all experiences in person right before the pandemic.
Honestly, with the pandemic, it completely disrupted the entire events industry, right? We're so used to doing in-person events, and prior to the pandemic, we've done some hybrid. So that we're familiar, but virtual was completely new to us. We just had to pivot and then get trained. And then I think when it happened, we assigned each of the team members 5 different platforms to really deep research, attend the session, and become the expert of those platforms. And then we ended up with about 40 that we know really well. And based on the 40, we found the ones that match our client. So I wish it was just one platform that we could say, okay, all our clients can use, but each event that we do is so different because we do conferences, we do gala, we do grand openings. Each of those really require different type of platform, right? So we kind of work backwards and just really have that mindset like, okay, we're here to provide solutions. So even during pandemic, our mission is always helping fuel brands connect with people and help fuel brands to change lives for the better. So during pandemic, especially during pandemic, you need that. So we pivoted, and it was such a fantastic process because you know what? It validates the team that's here at Innovate Marketing Group. And I don't give them enough credit, but they're truly amazing because they were all, when I say, we're going to pivot, we're going to do this, they all say, sure, right? Nobody was like, oh, I don't want to learn. It was like, yeah, what do we do? And we really divide and conquer because one person can do it all, right? And then since the pandemic, we have now done over 130 virtual events. So we're pretty proud of that. And then just this week, we were notified that second year in the row, we actually were recognized on the BizBash 500 list. So that's such a big kudos to the entire team here. So very proud.
Amazing. Wow. The diligence and dedication Amanda shares here are incredible. While others were exploring, should we pivot or not, Amanda and her team took the time to hone their niche to provide the best service by mastering as many platforms as they can, and are now versed in 40 platforms. 40! Honestly, I didn't know there were that many platforms. This is the type of diligence and care we need to create experiences people could appreciate and connect with. It's not created overnight. In fact, when I asked Amanda how she honed her lens and how she creates such thoughtful, interactive experiences, she says an answer that may surprise you. Observation skills. Yes, having the eye to really understand what your people want and listening to why they want it. No matter how creative you may be in production, if it's not something that your people want, then you're creating noise, not an experience. So how are you learning how to observe and listen when everything is online? And how can we do a better job creating those experiences?
It just takes a lot of practice and also knowing what's acceptable and what's not. I think a lot of it when you observe, and that's why typically, even our team, when we do an event, we're not taking breaks all at the same time. There's always one person in the room so they can constantly be looking to see, making sure everything's going smoothly. Or secondly, if someone needs help. When someone needs help, they're usually looking around and they look like they need help. Some people are always like, oh my God, how do you know I need help? I'm like, you just have that look on your face. Like you need a little assistance. And then also what kind of help and being able to manage that expectation, right? Because sometimes people ask for the world, but we could only do so much. I wish I was Harry Potter and I have a special wand and could just tap and make it come true. But if you give me $1 million budget, I don't know if I could make it a $10 million budget, but, so things like that. It comes with hands-on experience, I would say for that. Definitely the more events you do, you are observing. So that's also part about a lot of our training. When we're training the entry-level people, trying to elevate them in terms of their career, we're like, look around the room, right? And just like you, it's like, what am I looking at? Not the handsome people or the pretty ladies, okay? Like those are great. But you're looking at, okay, what are all the stations good? Because sometimes we're even looking at, is there a bottleneck in the process or in the layout, right? You never know, because maybe that day, the hotel entryway now have 3 big buses that was there, right? And then maybe your registration's there. So you've got to think quick and be able to readjust so that there is not a long line that's there. Like one time we actually had an event where it was a huge line. It was for a Women's Day Out event. And we had these really handsome guys. And then we happened to have chocolates too. So we gave all the guys a basket of chocolate. And then they basically went down the line, passed it out to the ladies. And literally people were like, oh, thank you so much for the chocolate. And they're just like, I'm so sorry for the wait. And they're eating their chocolate. And they're like, can we take a picture? And then people are like, oh my God, it's like the best line ever, right? And when they finally get to the registration, they're like, oh, it's my turn. I have to go. They're actually sad they had to leave the long line. So just many ways you could do this. I remember another one when we're in Miami. So us being from California, when it rains, LA people shut down. But Miami is like they had a sprinkle. So last minute, we just had to like redirect how the line is formed so that the attendees is not in the rain, right? So, but you need someone fast to be able to think on their feet so that they can make adjustments like that.
Think on your feet indeed. It's so important that we have more leaders and team members who are always thinking on their feet and are ready to listen, observe, and understand what people want, whether it was in person, hybrid, or virtual. This is why I was inspired also by how Mo Hamzian had to rethink about experiences for his new startup, Bell, a digital co-working space that is rethinking how we work.
This is one of my lecturers told me at business school. If you want to get rich, don't start your own business, which is absolutely true, by the way. It's one of the least glamorous things you could do. Be forewarned, any upcoming entrepreneurs. No, I'm kidding. It's amazing to do it. And I love it because today's world is designed to some extent. So much friction has been taken out of the market compared to the 1970s, whereby people like me and lots of other people like yourself can start businesses and make something of it.
Co-working space has been on the rise, and many have probably used or visited one in the past few years. It's a great way to connect, have a different pace, and be around other people who are also working on meaningful projects they care about that are not just at your company. Mo always thought about wanting to reinvent how we think about co-working spaces as someone who frequented coffee shops and co-working spaces, and realized how limiting it still was in what was done. Still, starting such a company at the very start of the pandemic took extra courage. Is this truly an experience that we think people would want more? Mo said yes. Yes, because we're tired of now working alone at home and with all our personal and professional boundaries mixed up.
Like all other Americans around us, I was working out of coffee shops quite a bit. My home office was just not good enough. And I didn't actually have an office, for the last 4 or 5 years I've been in the US. And over time, I realized that just the coffee shop experience is great. If you want to buy a cup of coffee and maybe a pastry, it's amazing. I love it. But not quite that good if you actually want to do some good quality work. You want to take your $3,000 laptop and have this meeting together. It's nearly impossible. And eventually, the kind of straw that broke the camel's back. One day, I just was unable to get a table. I had an important meeting, unable to fulfill this kind of what I thought is this God-given right for me to be able to do just some good quality work in a modern culture because I couldn't do it at home. And I think that pain point suddenly said, I can do something about this. Wait a minute, I can actually fix this. I can make this product and experience better. And then the entrepreneur kicks in. If you can, you must. And if you don't, woe betide you. And then you wake up, you become this kind of dog with a bone, tenacious idea that I will not sleep until I find a solution. And it took me 30 days to realize what needs to be done. And I called up my friend and now my co-founder and CEO, Jack. I said, Jack, he was very successful at what he was doing. He was in finance, a partner at a very reputable firm. I said, Jack, how about you stop selling money and come and sell some coffee with me instead? And I thought he was having a midlife crisis. He considered it for 2 weeks and he said yes, which was incredible. And, he said, we both said yes for many reasons. Why? Because I think the world is changing. We had Workplace 1.0, Industrial Revolution. Maybe 100 and something years later, we had Workplace 2.0, ushered in by WeWork, possibly. What genre they created was incredible, how they gave this idea of legitimacy to this whole entrepreneurial teams. And Workplace 2.0 was pretty much, its manifesto was said, you guys need flexibility, and it's okay for you not to have this long-term lease as a small business. Don't be encumbered by that. And it's okay. You're one of us if you don't. And this whole idea of service office was before them. They didn't innovate it, but co-working came and said, we'll give you some gravitas and flexibility around that. But today, we need something much more hybrid. We need something much more iterative because the whole idea of work has changed because of the pandemic. So what we found as Vel, as our startup, is that there are millions of people. When I give you the statistics, it's astonishing. There are actually 59 million freelancers in the US. It's an Elderman report commissioned by Upwork. And people go to coffee shops several times a week. They work for a couple of hours a day when they're in there, and they spend trillions of dollars a year in coffee shops working. So re-innovating a vertical that's been around for maybe 30, 40 years, popularized by Howard Schultz and Starbucks, and now lots of other boutique independents doing such an amazing job, to be able to create a vertical that is already there as such a classic setting and bring technology into it, bring experience into it, and change its DNA slightly, whereby you can go in. Someone like me can reserve a table prior before, can get flexible privacy and go inside. Not having to travel any further or spend any more is a real riveting prospect, I think. And for that reason, I think that's why we're growing, that's why we're raising money, and that's why we're improving and increasing our team.
Powerful insights here, Mo. Think about it. When was the last time you really thought about how your workplace, your office, your co-working space really gave you the flexibility, creativity, and respect for privacy you wanted? Right before the pandemic, I remember visiting my friends in their different fancy offices and was surprised how many were either totally full of cubicles that made it look grim and others that lacked privacy by having all open space. I mean, think about carrying all your laptops and goods every time you move, or that you have to overhear your colleagues' conversation every time you are working on something. It's still like that in many places we work, but it doesn't have to be that way. This is why it's exciting to see more innovation and creativity in office spaces and co-working spaces like the work Mo is doing. That being said, Mo is making it very clear. They are not there to replace the coffee shops. We want to see those, but this is how Vel and his team's work could complement. Again, the hint is what we need more is companies and co-working environments that are complementing our existing routines and spaces we want to have, not seeing it as a zero-sum game.
The way we kind of describe ourselves is a little bit cute. We say if Starbucks was mom and WeWork was dad and they decided to have a kid, we would be the kid. Now notice I said Starbucks was mom and WeWork was dad because they have a different kind of relationship, dad and mom. So what does that mean? It means we want to be obviously a coffee shop because Starbucks is mom. So our first footprint is a coffee shop, but we have this idea of hybrid work. So we find that people, the COVID, the last few years, pandemic, has on a wholesale level, psychologically, shifted employers and employees' relationship to work and to this idea of commute and where you work. It's now legitimate to work in other places than work. And co-working is a workplace, just like an office. But a coffee shop is not a workplace traditionally. And home is not a workplace traditionally, even though you have a home office. So we see that to some extent, we are disrupting the market, but we're not a substitute. We're complementing at the same time because we don't think a coffee shop could ever replace your home office. And we don't think a coffee shop could ever replace a co-working or a real office because that's just not what they're designed for. But we want to create a space that says, if you want to work 3 or 4 times a week for an hour or two, because you just live too far from the office or you just don't want to commute, or home for those moments isn't good enough, and you need something highly transactional and ready and available, then you go to your local coffee shop. Well, your local coffee shop may not be right. You come to us. So I think the shifts that's happening with that, it means that lots of employers, including co-working, will have to adjust their footing. To what degree, we'll see when the dust settles. But we feel the mindset of us as the customer who works from the employer is now different. And really, for employers with a lot of foresight who are leading the market have clued onto it earlier on, and they're accommodating in huge ways.
Yes, it's time to think beyond just the meetings we host and how that feels, but the whole experience. What does your office experience look like? What does your hybrid event look like? And what does your weekly event look like? All of those events influence how we experience our days at work. It's not just the work, the deadlines, as Amanda said. It's the whole journey. What is the workplace journey you are creating? Rethink, we must. Reflect, we must, to find new ideas. So whether you are tuning in ideas for your business or for yourself, the key is to rethink and get curious. What is the experience you want to create? Why is that important? And how are you willing to do it? You'll find the way when you have the will. Thank you so much again for joining us at Dear Workplace. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This is your host, Monica King, founder and CEO of Innovators Box. Thank you, Amanda and Mo, for sharing your journey and insight with us today. Please take a moment to follow and learn more about their journey. I put the links in the show notes. Next week, I'm eager to wonder, what does being happy at work really mean? And is that possible? And if so, how can we be happy? Yes, spoiler, it is possible to be happy, so join us to learn how you can bring more happiness at work, regardless of where you work. I'll see you next week at Dear Workplace. Send any questions at info@innovatorsbox.com or at dearworkplace.com. Have a great week!
Hi, I'm Sam, an audio engineer at Innovators Box, and I hope you're enjoying Dear Workplace. Since we've been home so much of the year, my cat now follows me everywhere, so we started calling her my studio assistant. I can't say she's the fastest learner, but she's extremely devoted to the cause. This show is brought together by our awesome podcast team, me on audio engineering and editing, Kelly Gravo on marketing, Akriti Pandey on website, Monica Escobar on branding, Leah Orsini on social media graphics, Sarah and Floor on project assistance, and Luke Helder on music. And of course, Dear Workplace is hosted and directed by Monica Kang, founder and CEO of Innovators Box. To continue the conversation of reimagining the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. Would love to hear what you enjoy and what I can convince Monica to talk about in our next episodes. See you next week.